Let's turn this cheap $200 welding table into a fabrication station.
I can fix that.
You already know exactly where we're going, where all warranties go to be voided. That's what we're looking for. What is this? 36 by 24, 189 with the clampage. This is what we're gonna grab. I'm gonna take this home and I'm gonna tell you exactly everything I hate about it. Can't forget a couple of these old dogs. And that's what we're all in for right now with some casters and the table. But before I'm gonna call it worthy, we got some more work to do.
Now, as someone who's had a little taste of the sweet life, I hate what this table is for what it's marketed for. As a welding and fixture table, it's far from that. Starting from the top down, I'll give you the reasons why. While we're a little bit thicker than 1/8 of an inch, we're not quite 4 millimeters. 3/16 is pretty thin, and I would at least want that. You can't put heavy parts or weld a lot on this table because heat and weight will change the top of it, and you won't have a flat surface to work on. It's kind of the whole point of the thing. Not only that, but the fixtures that come with it, adding the extra step of bolting underneath is a pain in the butt when you don't have a thick tabletop like this one over here. And we're going to get plenty of use out of it because it does have the holes for it. And then we just move to the overall assembly of the thing. We had to put a lot of bolts, you know, we go tighten all these things down and get a little carried away. I squished some metal in some parts and some of these bolts went free spinning on me. I don't really trust bolts, I'd rather weld it. And then we move down past the legs to this little support. It's super easy to pop out, so I imagine if you're moving and working on this thing, if one corner pops out, it can become a little bit of a hindrance. And then moving down to the feet, self-leveling feet. And while that's a nice touch, I found that I don't really care about those little feet. Most of the time in my shop, it's flat enough. When it's such a light table, it's likely that things are gonna wiggle and shift and all these bolts are gonna end up coming loose or not the way you wanted them in the first place. That's kind of the perk to this, is the fact that it is a really light work table, but it's almost too light. Now don't get me wrong, this table as it stands might be perfect for what you need. For me, I think it's a little bit too flimsy. I'd like it to be a bit more mobile, and I like to utilize a lot more of the space that's underneath it. So here's the plan. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start with this little support that they have just wedged in here. We're gonna chop off everything that's hanging in place, and we're gonna also move it up just a hair on all 4 corners so it sits a little bit higher, because we're gonna utilize this as a shelf now. And we're also gonna put a second one of these at the bottom of it so we can shore up 2 parts of the actual build, and we'll have supports here and here. Not only that, but flooring in both of them, so we have welder storage on the bottom, miscellaneous big items for this, and then on this top shelf we'll be able to put our fixturing stuff as well as other hand tools and whatnots underneath. And then weld, to get rid of these bolts and weld everything we can, every weld joint that we can find, we're gonna put a bead on it. Once we get it nice and solid, we'll go ahead and take these leveling feet and we're gonna cut them out and put in some wheels. We're gonna put some casters on that old dog, and that's gonna help add some rigidity as well as be able to roll it around. These casters are gonna be locking, so we'll still be able to put it down and hold it in place. I wanna be able to have a little workstation off to the side where I have a vise, not a big vise because we can't put a lot of weight on it. And on the other side of it, because we're gonna end up needing to do grinding pretty much anywhere, we're gonna put grinding racks where we can hang our grinders, and then a place to hang miscellaneous grinding discs. We might put a little MIG gun holder right here, power strip on this old dog so we can have power and only have to run 1 cord to it. A lot of things we could do to this table to make it way better. All we gotta do now is figure out how much metal we need and go pick it up from the metal supply. Now I like to go to my local metal supply, and I made a little bit of an order. I got this 1.5 by 1.5 by 1/8 inch angle iron. I got 2 pieces at 10 foot, and I got this 5 foot piece of 3/8 round stock. That was like something like 25 bucks. Now I know that might not be the same where you're at, but that's where it is there at the Metal General. And I got a couple of these pieces of tubing through their scrap bin because you never know what might catch your eye. And these kind of fit right inside each other, which is what I was looking for. And they let me just have these for free. And then we got, of course, our 4 casters, our locking casters. And I've got, of course, a lot of scrap steel that I could probably source from in order to get everything else that we need to get. Again, you may not have everything that I'll have today, but I'm going to still put a cut list or a part list in the description so you at least have that. We're going to do a lot of angle grinder stuff. Shout out to today's sponsor, which is 3M Abrasives. If y'all have been watching the channel for the past 2 years, we've been using the Cubitron 3 brand for quite some time. When it comes to the Scotch-Brite disc, we're going to have a great time removing this paint, the fiber disc, which is one of my absolute favorite things to take down the face of a weld or just try to put a simple bevel on something super fast, the fastest. And it's what we're going to use in order to get all this prepped and ready to weld.
All right, step 1 is just beefing up this existing support and kind of turning it into some trays for all of our tools and our fixtures. Throwing our angle iron into the chop saw now, we can cut our 2 pieces of 1 by 1 by 1/8 inch angle iron.
We can now lay them in about where we think we're gonna go, maybe pull some measurements, but first we're gonna do this little notch technique. So we're gonna cut out the little bit of material so that we can set this angle iron flush on the other piece of angle iron. Actually getting some use out of these little fixture clamps here. You'll definitely want 2 of them for doing something like this, using this cutoff wheel to nip out this little section of material. It's the little things in fabrication that add up at the end. Once we get the ends prepped up and deburred, they'll go ahead and sit into the existing frame pretty good. Now we can move on to the sheet metal. I've got a bit of drop laying around the shop, so that's what we're gonna use to put these trays in. We can kind of see the layout of what I'm thinking of, where all the fixtures are gonna be, and then we can go over here, turn on the thermocut extra fire. Now it'd be smarter to do this in one piece of sheet metal, but I don't have one piece that fits, so I'm just gonna use these 3 different pieces of sheet metal. And in the middle, we're gonna make some holes in there so we can hold our fixtures that this table comes with. Now I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way, and we're gonna lay a piece of sheet metal on the actual table and then trace the holes upside down there so that we can get the whole layout and know where we can start drilling. Once everything is cut, we want to clean up just the edges where all that dross might be. Not going to get all the mill scale off, but this fiber disc is really good for removing the edges of metal. Once we can see where all the 3 pieces will sit, we're going to have to prep all this paint. So we've got a Scotch-Brite pad. We're going to just go to town on this frame. Try to get as much of the paint off. It's not likely we're going to succeed by getting every little inch of it off. We're probably going to have to weld over a lot of paint on this project. We're going to go ahead and take the little tabs that are on the side and just delete those real quick with the cutoff wheel. Now we go about tacking these 2 supports in, make sure they're lined up where they want to be and they're nice and square, and we can get to tacking. You can see that there's still paint on the other side, and it's just what we're going to be battling this entire project without like getting anything sandblasted or doing anything crazy. The point of a fixture table is to keep everything from distorting. Now, you don't necessarily need one, and when you're building projects like this, a flat surface is definitely a plus, but just putting pressure on things as you go about tacking and spreading the heat out on your project is going to be your best bet for not really having to use any type of clamps or fixturing. This is some pretty thin stuff as far as the border goes, so I've got to be pretty careful and not weld anything too solid, otherwise I'm definitely going to get some sort of banana bowing going on. We'll go ahead and tack all the backside, trying to spread out the heat, moving from each side to each side, not putting too many tacks too close together. We're going to add a lot more, but first we're going to go ahead and weld out these solid bits. That'll add some rigidity before we start adding in a lot more tacks. We'll go ahead and take the fiber disc and do probably one of my favorite things to do with it, and that's removing welds. We're going to blend these things down, flip this thing over, and then start adding some welds on the inside. We could pretty much weld just these downhill pieces, and that's about all we'll need because there's already a lot of tacks on it. We're going to set the saw to 45 degrees now so that we can build our second support. We're going to start with the frame. Cutting 45s can be tricky. We've got a few videos on this. We did some with cutting square tubing. We've done some cutting some angle iron. Cutting 45s on angle iron can kind of mess with your head a little bit, so you got to make sure you're cutting them the right direction so that you don't ruin any material. Once we get all the ends of our angle iron mitered, we can tack. I only put like 1 tack on it. I'll make sure that it's square with just the 1 tack in each corner, and then go ahead and pull measurements, cut those pieces of angle iron. We'll go ahead and notch those the same as we did on the first ones, but remember that we need to take off that little bit of extra for the thickness of the angle iron that we're working with so that everything sits nice and flush. Once everything is nice and tacked in solid, we can start welding stuff out. Now we're going to weld this one solid instead of putting a bunch of tacks in there, and you still want to be methodical about it, especially if you're not using anything to clamp things down. You should probably start somewhere like the corners, weld them all the same direction, start on opposite ends, and then once you start welding the other joints, always think about welding the opposite side before you try to weld anything close to the other one. It takes some experience to figure these things out, but watch them as you do them so that you can see where metal moves. We'll pick back up the fiber disc and go ahead and blend all the welds down. We're not going to get them all the way down to the base metal because it's just not that crucial. We don't need to put a pretty finish on it. We're going to take this expanded metal that I had laying up against my shop for I don't know how long, it's so rusty, and go ahead and rip it open with the cutoff wheel, same length and width of our support. That piece was absolutely disgusting. It was super duper rusty, but we got all the rust, at least most of the rust off anyway, and we started tacking it down. When it comes to expanded metal, I highly recommend not skipping a single beat and tacking every single piece that touches. That's just going to keep everything really sturdy and strong. You won't have any sagging or anything like that. Like I said, I really don't think I'm the best fabricator, so this is all we're going to do. We're going to stomp in the floor here, and just let it bottom out on the little bit of tabs that it has. We'll go ahead and take the other support, put it the height we want. This is probably a part you could put it wherever. Have two sides that are clamped and it's wedged in there pretty good, so we can just kind of tap it with a hammer to get it squared up. Once everything's even, we can take that 3M Scotch-Brite pad and clean up all the paint where we're going to tack everything, throw a bunch of tacks in, and then we'll flip it upside down. Once that table's flipped over, we can go ahead and take out these leveling feet that they have here. And the little nut that's on there is kind of in the way, so we'll do what the fiber does best and just delete that sucker. Go down all the way to the corner, lickety split, and then we can start tacking in our casters. Now I know what y'all are gonna say, that fourth corner is kind of floating in the air and not really supported by anything, and I should have probably done something about that. But it's not going to be a lot of weight that we're ever going to put on this table. While it's upside down, we'll go ahead and weld out the bottom of this steel. Now look, I don't recommend welding over paint, and you can see that most of the metal coming out of this MIG gun is falling on the ground and not really going on to the actual metal itself. But that's what it's doing. It's like coming in, blowing apart that paint, falling down, kind of sacrificing itself for me while that second bit of blob of metal comes and welds everything. It'll shoot. Now this table is nice and sturdy. Everything's welded up solid. The bottom support's in, middle support's in. We're gonna start putting all the accessories on, starting with the grinder rack. Just pulling a measurement real quick and chopping a little piece of angle iron is really all you need. I'm gonna eyeball the links and chop all this round stock up and start laying things out on the table about what I can fit and see what works. Looks like I can fit about 3 discs on here, and we're gonna take that round stock and just tack it in place. Make sure it's at least square. We put a little bit of an angle on it with the chop saw, so it's gonna stand up at an angle. And I still have these other 2 pieces, so I might as well just go ahead and tack those in too. Maybe put a little bend in them. Take them over to this other vise and line everything up, because I don't need that long of the round stock sticking off. That's definitely gonna catch your pants. Go ahead and line it up where we want it and just simply tack it. And honestly, I'm just going to use the existing holes on it to line everything up. It's probably square, at least as square as I and you can tell. We're going to hang our grinders on it, and we're going to start putting our grinding discs on these pegs. While we got a little bit of an angle on the saw, we're just going to cut a little tube here. Find out where we want it on the side, anywhere, it doesn't matter, and then just weld it on there. This is perfect for my MIG gun holder. Like, why doesn't a welding table have a MIG gun holder if all you got to do is cut a tube and weld it to the side? Now this is probably one of the easiest things you could do, is adding a table vise. We're going to take this 1/4-inch plate that I think I used this for our plug weld video. We're going to plasma cut it up, try to do some quick layout and put the holes where we need it so that we can bolt that up a little bit later. Now here are the pieces that we're going to use. We got our 1/4-inch plate cut out. We've got a piece of scrap square tubing, and then we got this little hitch adapter. I'm pretty sure you can get that at Harbor Freight too. So we're going to use one of those holes that exists there for the pin and put this nut and bolt and little handle setup that we're going to put it all together. We'll start by adding this nut and bolt to it, MIG weld it in. I usually leave the bolt in, put a little anti-sputter to protect the threads. Usually that bolt doesn't seize up as long as it's already in there. And then we're going to go ahead and take a die grinder to the nut and kind of see if we can get this handle to sit in there well. It started dancing on me a little bit, but we made enough of a groove that we can lay down this round stock and weld it in. Once it's all welded in, we've got our handle set up. We just want to figure out where the plate needs to be on the end of this tubing, get it kind of squared up, and look, we get to use some of the clamps again. So they're not worthless. I mean, they actually do serve a purpose. And once everything's tacked and welded in as far as the tube to the plate, we can kind of lay out where we're going to put it. Now this was a little bit sketchier than I really wanted to. I thought about flipping the table over, but I didn't. Just kind of used the cutoff wheel and just got in there like swimwear and just cut that little line open. Then we're going to take a crescent wrench and just wiggle this little piece of tubing out like a tooth. It's thin enough that if you have enough patience, you could probably get all the way through, and that's what we did, so that we can clean up our little trailer receiver hitch and tack it into that little notched spot. Once it's tacked in, we'll weld some of the downhole pieces on there to the tubing, and then go ahead and plug weld the top. We got to sacrifice 2 of these holes, but it's going to be fine. We got plenty of other holes to use, and it's going to make sure that this is really sturdy. Once it's all welded in, we could take that fiber disc again, kind of the star of the show, and just blend everything down nice and smooth. You can see how it just kind of slides in there. We can make our little makeshift handle. That's going to torque everything down. We can bolt it in. And looky there, now we have a vise that we're going to use to bend some hooks for some leads. And I don't think you're going to be able to bend anything like this on the existing table that's already there. So I think this is a crucial thing to have. Now we just do a little bit of cleaning all over the table. A little of this, a little bit of that. Get everything wiped down. And then I think to add the piece de la resistance is adding a power strip to your table. It's just so easy to do, and you can run one cord and power many tools in one little spot. Now this is a table that I can get plenty of use out of. All the supports, the trays, tool holding, fixtures are nice and organized. We got machine storage. I think people sleep on the fact that you got free will and you could just put a power strip, zip tie one on there, and you can move this anywhere. Outside it would be nice whenever I want to make a mess and do a bunch of grinding so it's not here in the shop. Not only that, but having this removable vise, I could take it out, put it underneath. I can even put my freaking rollout wheel in this thing, and it's still heavy enough now that it supports the weight of that big old thing. Rolls around super easy stuff, guys, with just angle iron and round stock. A couple other pieces and bits here. I'll make sure that there's a full list of everything that I used in the description below. Again, thanks guys for watching. We'll see you on the next weld.